there's one moment where like you have to like pledge into a secret underground movement, and you have to say some pretty intense stuff, and everyone's literally looking at him like he's joining a cult. So yes, unless you want to lose friends, I wouldn't play it in a public space. But that said, I think it is a really fun game to play with friends.
Today's indie game is Unknown Number, a first-person talker.
What number did you dial?
What's going on? Who is it?
Hold on! As you can hear, no time for chit-chat. Just give us the name of one of the security guards.
I can't hear you. $1 billion, please say you got it.
All right, good.
This is welcome like a wall of fire.
This is Officer Keane. I'm outside Vault Alpha. Over.
It's a thriller and puzzle adventure, and the special thing about it is that it's voice-controlled. The game is being developed by Godolphin Games in England, and at Godolphin Games, Thomas Keane is the creative director, and he's now here with me. Hi, Tom.
Excited to be finally talking to you guys.
Your game, Unknown Number, a first-person talker, is coming up. You want to maybe describe a scene for us so we can imagine it a bit better?
Yeah, so the weird thing about Unknown Number is it's basically, so it's a voice-controlled thriller, and it's experienced entirely through a series of interactive phone calls. And it all starts with this kind of very mysterious voicemail from these two eco-warriors who are trying to board an oil rig, in this and in the chaos and confusion of this kind of illegal activity that they're undertaking, they accidentally set off the alarm. And they're desperately trying to get hold of someone in their organization to help them. But in their kind of, in the madness of the moment, they dial your number by mistake. They dial one digit different. And it's kind of, that's the moment that kind of kickstarts this, this big heist where you sort of join this couple as a co-conspirator, and you kind of help them steal sort of a hell of a lot of money from a very evil oil baron in the middle of the North Sea.
Okay. And what do I see exactly in the game? Is it like first person?
Yeah, so the game is like I say the interface is one of the most unusual things about it, because what you see is a phone model in the center of the game, and you essentially, so it's almost like a phone sim, if you imagine that, and it's got all the things you might expect, like a keypad and the little digits and the hang up button and all that sort of stuff. But what happens during the game is all of those things kind of magically shapeshift, right? They sort of shapeshift to, reflect the action that's going on in the game and reflect what's happening to your co-conspirators. And all of this, the actual phone is situated in a kind of an FMV, a full motion video, almost movie, where, you're getting all this kind of stimulus of where the characters are. So you're seeing the phone, certainly, but the phone is coming alive, and the background is this kind of almost like a impressionistic movie of what's actually going on. So it's an unusual interface. It's first person in the sense that you are playing as yourself. The player is literally picking up the phone and answering, as themselves, and using their voice as themselves. Don't know how else you do it. And also making decisions based on, what you personally as a player feel. And there's a lot of moral stuff that happens in it. A lot of big moral decisions you've got to make. And it's kind of interesting, I guess, for you to sort of see which way you go. Are you going to be kind of evil? Are you going to betray your new friends? Are you going to stab them in the back? Or are you going to help them and, maybe even save the world?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I think I've never seen such kind of interface before. So that's pretty cool. What's the gameplay like exactly? Do I only use my voice the entire time?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, the really unique thing about this game is it is voice controlled. And while there have been voice controlled games before, this, for us, we sort of see this as a really kind of solid experiment and investigation, all the different things you can do with voice control, exploring voice control as a core mechanic rather than a kind of additional gimmick. And so, you'll be doing everything from, speaking passwords to giving directions through this oil rig to, even impersonating sort of oil barons on conference calls. And so, we've been super exploratory with the voice stuff. I mean, like, for example, like sometimes you have to sing, sometimes you have to shout, sometimes you have to whisper, sometimes you have to say it louder, sometimes you have to say it quieter. And it's kind of just going, it's not just the words you say, it's also how you say it. And I think that's, in a way, what makes our game slightly different from any previous experiment, is it's looking at voice more holistically and looking at more, almost like all the different ways you could possibly do it, right? We also obviously have this phone, this phone sim in front of you, and that's also been an inspiration for a bunch of puzzles. Like, for example, in one puzzle, you know how a phone has all these different tones when you press a key, like burp, 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 well, in one of the puzzles you have to play a tune on that, for example. And so it's just basically like we've basically just looked at a phone and gone, what puzzles could we create out of a phone interface, like a telephone interface, and then we've looked at voice and gone, well, what puzzles could we create out of a voice interface in the broadest possible sense, and the result is unknown number.
And what happens, like, if I have to impersonate someone? What happens if I fail, if I can't do that, or if I can't sing?
It's good, yeah. I mean, I think that one of the important things, this is where we're doing a lot of play testing and fine tuning. I mean, you want people to be doing these things, but not having to do them in a way that is unbearable. So for example, like, you have to impersonate someone, but the way we do it is like, no, her voice is higher. No, it's higher. No, it's higher. No, it's higher. And it's just about having to speak at a higher pitch in general, rather than necessarily having to having to sing an exact note or hold a tune, So
okay, so higher,
so it's
higher,
pretty lenient. Exactly, yeah, exactly. And and as long as you're going higher each time, you'll pass. So my recommendation is just start super low. That's the answer. But I think the other thing is, it's an interesting question about fail states, and I think we've been really keen to not have any game over states. What we have is like, we have fail states in terms of like, that's not the password. Go find it out. Go try again, or that wasn't said right. Go find another route. But there's no kind of like game over screen where you have to start at the beginning or anything like that. I know there's a very trendy at the moment, but we've just sort of thought like, this is an adventure, and we want people to be on the adventure and get to the end. Whichever path they choose, we want them to have a full experience that doesn't kind of have some massive roadblock in that sort of frustrates and throws them off course.
You mostly use your voice in the game, but you also have to use mouse and keyboard for some puzzles, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like, and the things you're clicking on are a phone interface. But also the other thing, of course, is that it's an ARG in the sense it's some sort of an augmented reality game, or is it alternative reality game? I never know, by the way. I've actually been involved in a bunch of ARGs, and I still don't know what it stands for. But it's like, in the sense that it's the game also takes place beyond the app, or beyond the game per se, the actual application. For example, for some calls you have to go visit a website, the Slag Oil, the oil company website, and find a bunch of names, or look at a bunch of maps, or whatever it is. And that takes place outside the actual game. So that's, other times that the mouse and keyboard will be coming to play. You actually have to be Googling shit and stuff. So
I must say I have a mixed experience with voice-controlled games. I haven't played that many in my lifetime, I must admit. But still, the ones I've played, I think about 3 or 4, some worked really well. Some also recognized my voice or the things I was saying, and some totally didn't. So how do you make sure that the voice commands in your game work?
Yeah, it's obviously the biggest kind of sort of challenge from a technical point of view. But what's actually really interesting is the answer to it isn't necessarily a technical answer. The answer is actually a creative one. And this is one of the things I actually talk about a bunch with other devs on Twitter who are also exploring voice control. And really, the worst possible scenario in a voice control game is where the player feels they can say anything, because the game isn't necessarily able to have a meaningful response to everything, right? So, no game is totally open-ended. There's actually a set of things the game is looking for. And so what we've tried to do is actually make it super clear to the player at all times what they should be saying. So for example, we make it go, we need directions. Okay, cool. Well, it's north, south, east, west, or it's left, right, or it's straight on, or it's go backwards. Rather than a kind of just a general I don't know, maybe go towards the, I don't know, the bunk room or whatever. We actually go, no, we want directions. Give it in this way. Or, if it's a password, you go, well, there's only one right password. Everything else is wrong. And so the kind of the creative game design approach is you create a set of walled gardens, as it were, around the interactions, whereby actually players know pretty much what they should be saying, the ballpark, rather than being confused. Because as soon as they're confused, it just gets super abstract, because if you can say anything and then it doesn't work, it's like, well, what should I be saying? So we try and make it super clear. We're super directive about, the kind of behavior we're looking for at all times.
Okay. What if I want to play and there are other people in the room, or I want to play in the office and my boss is just running around? Can I also play this game without talking?
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, there's the whole there are sections you can play without talking, definitely. I mean, I think that it's interesting because we've just been doing a bunch of new playtests, and I've always been super careful about where I playtest. I always playtest privately and all that sort of stuff. But actually, the writer I work with, Roland, he actually did a playtest in a cafe as a kind of a sort of a stress test. And he said it worked technically. The game functioned and it was fine. The problem was that everyone looks at him really weird. Yeah. And there's this one moment where you have to pledge into a secret underground movement, and you have to say some pretty intense stuff, and everyone's literally looking at him like he's joining a cult. So yes, unless you want to lose friends, I wouldn't play it in a public space. But that said, I think it is a really fun game to play with friends.
Okay.
It's a kind of a communal experience because it's not about being on the keyboard and having really fast reactions. It's kind of like a communal experience, working out what the password is or what the best route is, and it doesn't matter who speaks as long as someone speaks. So you can kind of almost take it in turns, or just do it in a kind of loose sense.
The trailer for the game sounds really serious.
Repeat after us. I do solemnly pledge.
Analyzing audio levels. Processing data.
For the sake of our wounded Earth.
How serious is the game actually? Because on your website, on how you describe the game, there's one sentence where it says, tell knock-knock jokes and maybe even save the world. So it seems also funny in some way.
I think it's a bit the best analogy would probably be James Bond, where it has action bits and there's some deaths you're meant to feel sad about and all that sort of stuff. But fundamentally, it's also full of kind of sort of dumb one-liners that are just, just make the whole thing quite lighthearted. I mean, our original thing was we kind of want it to be a romp. The whole thing should just feel like a kind of an energetic, populist romp that, you're just sort of, it's so full of energy, you're being pulled from the front to the end of the game, in this kind of swirl. So it's we try to avoid it being too serious. I mean, it is a game, and so we put fun first and foremost, and most of the puzzles are kind of fun orientated. It's fun and silly to be having to speak higher and higher and higher. It's fun and silly to having to be shout at this point, or so. And also the two characters you're hanging out with, Ethan and Amanda, who are these eco warriors, they're actually they're meant to be a laugh anyway. They have a fun relationship where they're always kind of slightly getting at each other and teasing each other, and so you're kind of part of this gang where there's kind of almost a group banter. I mean, so that kind of takes you there, but it does also get pretty serious at the end. It's it does sort of climax towards a tragedy that you need to work your way out of. So maybe, who knows? Maybe it's a bit a bit Gemini in its approach, but I love it when things are collided that feel quite different, but then somehow work in this almost cartoon world.
Okay, sure. How did you come up with the idea for Unknown Number?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that the original thing was I was working on a different project that was actually, I think, really cool, and I still want to return to it, but that's for another day. I was working with this really awesome artist, and he actually ended up going to Hollywood and doing Hollywood shit. So good,
Wow.
Good for him. Whoop whoop. But it meant that I no longer had this artist to work with, and that game was so visually led. I was suddenly I just can't pursue this project anymore. And it had his ideal over it so much. And so I was like, I better find another artist to work with, and that's cool. In the meantime, why don't I make a game without any art? Right? And it was a sort of fun experiment. But it went from that. I basically suddenly got really excited about it, because I was like, oh, actually, I don't think this has really been done before. Like, I don't think there's been a voice controlled game about telephone calls, you know. And so I kind of, from there, it went from being a game where you get called on your mobile to actually being, you know, a full on voice controlled thriller, to actually, you know, suddenly we threw visuals back in, and there's loads of visuals now. It's like, that was the other note from Roland in his playtest. It's like, what's good about it is you are constantly being bombarded with stuff, you know, and it's part of that ethos of like, just like, you know, make it a, you know, an OTT cartoonish romp, you know. So yeah, so it basically it had a life of its own, really, where we just got really excited about the fact that we felt like we were exploring new ground. And that's kind of quite rare, I think, in the game sphere. And that's not to dig out anyone. I mean, I think people are super innovative and doing things that are so beyond what we could achieve in lots of arenas. But actually what's great is when you find something that you go, no, this is the thing that we want to explore. And this is something that no one else is currently looking at. And that's what we loved as a team, really. It's, you know, something to own and just actually really push the boundaries in a certain arena, basically. So yeah, it went from something small to being actually like this kind of massive epic thriller that's consumed like 3 years of our lives.
Was it always important to you all to make the game voice controlled?
Well, originally it was just going to be like almost like her story with voicemails. You know, that was kind of the original premise. But what was interesting is I have a sort of a background in a couple of different arenas. Like I basically work as a brand strategist as well, or have done rather for the last 10 years. And what was interesting is I worked a lot with various different brands and the primary question they had was like, oh, you know, shit, are we voice ready? We need to get voice ready. Like, voice is the future. Voice is taking over search, etc., etc. And I think what's interesting about that is I sort of knew that was the context, and I sort of knew that, like, you know, I was increasingly getting devices and that were voice controlled, and, you know, even your car wants to talk to you now, you know. And I suddenly went, hey, like if we're doing voicemails, like, why aren't we basically colliding this energy around voice and colliding that with the game world? Because actually the game world, like, really, I think, is underexplored voice in general. And I think the reason is there have been some really nasty failed experiments which has kind of just scared everyone off it, going like, let's just not do that for a bit. Let's wait for it to get better. But it has got better. There hasn't been anything exploring it for a while. So it just became a kind of an interesting thing of like almost like colliding two parts of my brain. One is I know everyone. I know a certain world where everyone is thinking about voice all the time. I know a different world, the game world, where no one's thinking about voice. And I went, let's just bring the two together.
I also looked through your press kit,
with
all the screenshots from the game and artwork and that sort of stuff. And I also saw a photo of your audio workshop. And I thought that was really amazing. It shows you sitting on the floor. And I don't know, you're inside some sort of storage room. And and in front of you, there's a chair with a mic on it. Is this how you recorded the voiceover for the game?
There's two parts of the voiceover. So the voice... Okay, so when you're doing a game where audio is that important, there was a real pressure on us to make sure the audio was like really, really good, obviously. And I think, but more than that, we wanted it to have a real personality. Because in one sense, it's one of the biggest characters in the game. So one of our key investments, I can't speak anymore. One of our key investments was to essentially work with some really brilliant actors, and we worked with an actor called Candice Palladino and also Simon Snashall, who are, you know, actors over here in the UK, and you know, they bring so much life to the game. You know, I always think they're like a Disney prince and a Disney princess in the way that they perform. You know, they're so big and ridiculous and like sort of femme and masc in this wonderful like OTT way where, you know, you just hear their voices and like, you know, Simon's really masculine. Like it's like really, it's just like, you know, the kind of voices that just are wonderful to hear and listen to. But beyond the voices. Yeah, I'm citing that as like something that I'm not, by the way. But beyond that stuff, you know, but beyond the performances, which really just has to, you know, credit to them, really, that, you know, they were such a joy to work with. We also worked super hard on the sound design stuff, And by sound design, that's the picture you saw in the workshop, right? That was that. What we did is we've spent about 6 weeks away, and yeah, it is a shed. It's a glorified shed, and we went with we're working with the producer Easy Fun, who is a sort of songwriter, producer, artist who's associated with PC Music stuff and the label, and basically he is a close friend / might even be my brother, etc. And he basically he's doing all the audio work for us. But in our early discussions, we were like, what we have to do is we have to do this all for real. We have to make all the sounds for real. Like, it's not good enough to just use the existing digital sounds. So we literally like locked ourselves away in this shed and surrounded ourselves with all the stuff you might need to create the sounds of a abandoned oil rig in the middle of the North Sea. You know, huge hunks of metal, like foghorns, like, you know, glass that we could smash and everything. So there's a lot of that stuff. So it's like, you know, clanging stuff, smashing stuff, you know, colliding things, and you're dragging grates around and pulleys and all that kind of stuff. Loads of old tools. I mean, what was funny is like it was so intense, and like we literally like all managed to like seriously like give ourselves injuries from like the sharp metal and all this sort of nonsense. So it was like really like wonderfully amateur, but like in a way that makes it feel handmade and real, you know. And like we were sort of cautious of the digital stuff because it sounds slick, but it doesn't sound very human. And that's what we were really wanting to. We wanted to actually sound like something real is happening at the end of the line. But yeah, that picture on the floor is actually me doing the buzz of halogen lights with my mouth. It's going. Zzz, zzz.
So that wasn't too dangerous.
No, that wasn't too dangerous. Dangerous in terms of like embarrassing me, maybe. Socially dangerous, but no, because the other thing was like it's great to have we also really like doing as much stuff vocally as possible, because again it just has a really warm human quality that you don't get through like digital pre-made sounds. So like there's lots of like breathing in there that we've put in there, like, you know, before you get a prompt to speak, there's a kind of like a sort of an inhale, and then afterwards there's an exhale, so you get the sense of, you know, almost like reflecting your breath as a player.
I think that's a really, really cool idea to do the sounds all by yourself. But of course, if you have to smash some glass, that's I can imagine that's quite dangerous. But the shed on the picture looked pretty clean, I must say.
Yeah, and this is like a serious note to anyone who's trying to do this. Like, actually, cut glass can go through like really serious gloves. So like, no, it was really fun. I mean, honestly, I'd recommend everyone doing it.
But all of you are fine, hopefully.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just to give you a sense of how crazy it got, like we were trying to be so authentic that at one point we actually like mic'd up and staged a hug, you know, because the characters hug. We're like, we want this hug to sound really real. So we like staged a hug between two of us. It's like a level of craziness that it was ridiculous. I mean, it was totally unnecessary and totally pointless. But that sound is in the game, so if you can spot that sound, if you go, oh, that's the hug, then yeah, bonus points.
I really gotta look out for that. Wow, that sounds amazing. So the game Unknown Number, first-person talker, the release is end of April?
Yes, we might be. I mean, yes, end of April, but we might be pushing it back a little bit due to a couple of festival requirements, etc. But the game will be ready by then, certainly. We're just kind of trying to find the right release date for various different moving parts.
Should we rather say that like second quarter this year?
Yeah, I was sort of saying Q2, but I don't even know what that means. I think realistically we'll be probably like end of June or something.
What's still to do before release?
We're fine-tuning, making sure the voice recognition's working, making sure that everything's as slick as it possibly can be. You know, just it's actually, they always say that the last 10% is the hardest part, and I think that's where we're at right now. You know, I've got like a list the size of my arm, but it's all really small stuff. It's like, oh, like maybe we could have a different animation here, or like maybe we could, you know, but you know, I don't know. I was just like, you know, we're experimenting with a couple of different like voice control options to boost the game at certain moments. Like you could sort of like a hybrid solution at times, and you know, we could ship the game today, but we just want to make sure it's feeling really good before we do that.
You developed the game for PC and mobile. Is that a challenge?
Actually, it's not for mobile anymore.
Ah, right. Okay.
Yeah, we've discontinued it. So the original plan was mobile and PC, but I think what happened is we built both versions, and the PC version actually has a lot more content in it. Because it's got all the FMV, full motion video backgrounds, and there's a whole bunch of different elements to it. Like there's some neat little tricks about how you access websites and stuff while in game. And we're like, God, this is just a way better version than the mobile version. And it suddenly started feeling like the master version. And we're like, should we just sideline the mobile version? I mean, there might be a mobile version that comes out later, but obviously it'll be at a lower price point and all that sort of stuff. Like the PC version is the one we've really been romancing and perfecting.
It will be released only for PC then.
Yeah, I mean PC, and it will be Mac and Windows, because Ben, our programmer, is a kind of a Mac genius. So I mean, he can do both, but he thinks in terms of Mac stuff. So so it wasn't like should we also do it on Mac? It was like that was a fundamental part of our thinking.
Okay, cool. So as I said before, you are the creative director of Godolphin Games. Are you also the founder or one of the founders of the studio?
Yeah, I'm the sole founder. No, basically, like Godolphin Games is like one of those. It's me, and then it's a collective of people who come in for various different things. Everyone's sort of playing a position. So I've got some artists I work with. I've got a brilliant writer. I mentioned Roland. We've got Easy Fun. We've got Ben. We've got web design, all this sort of stuff. But they're all like they're like it's very indie and raw in our setup. So we're kind of as and when. Yeah, it's like the old days of indie, I guess. We're trying to live it.
Yeah, that's true. So how did you come up with the idea to start the studio?
Well, I mean, I mentioned that I'd been doing advertising stuff before, and I think that I worked on Xbox as the brand and all the associated games for a number of years. And one of the key things that I did with them was actually to do a series of ARGs, hence the embarrassment of me not knowing whether it's augmented or alternative reality games. But I did a bunch of, so I just did one for Halo, and I did one for Tomb Raider, and I did one for Sunset Overdrive, and a whole bunch of different things. And they were all seriously well received. And it was kind of at that moment I was like, hey, marketing's all right, it's okay. But actually my real passion is game making. And it was kind of about that time that actually, a bit after, but about that time that the indie scene was becoming increasingly plausible to enter, so I guess I don't know. It's this is my shit potted history of indie, but I sort of think it starts in 2008 in Jonathan Blow, and then also the birth of the App Store and all that sort of stuff. And so it was getting to a point where I was like, oh, actually I could really see how we could be in this space and be seriously indie while doing it. We don't need masses of money behind us. We just need a lot of dedication and a lot of hard work. I just sort of worked out the path, and I thought, fuck it, I'm done with this advertising stuff. I'd rather not be telling people to buy stuff that that is okay, and rather be making stuff that I think is really special, and then get someone else to sell it to them.
Does the job experience kind of help you now also?
I mean, there's various different things. I mean, one of my other major clients was Amazon Audible, right? So they're all podcast. They're podcasts, and a big part of my role there was about sort of trying to encourage content creation from them, and sort of understanding what a good piece of content would be. So there's a lot of experience that I've got in terms of understanding, how content the kinds of content has the audio world, and there's obviously the voice control thing came entirely from that experience, and also just I know it sounds silly, but just the fact that none of us are straight out of university means we're all pretty focused and experienced at how to work, how to really work in an efficient way, and we've got wide networks of people we can talk to and connect with and get advice from and all that sort of stuff, which I know that I'm sorry, I'm not trying to patronize people straight out of uni. I'm sure there's so many people who are way more sorted than I was, basically. But yeah, I think it's a good time in all of our lives to be doing this. I think I think we'd feel much more at sea if we were doing this 10 years ago.
As Godolphin Games, is there a particular style or genre you now want to focus on? Like, for instance, only developing voice-controlled games?
Well, interestingly, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, for a while I was like, yeah, let's just do this voice controlled thing, and I think that is cool. And I'm interested in doing the voice controlled game. We're actually currently in conversations with a publisher about a voice controlled game, the follow up one. But I don't want it to be limited to voice control. I think that for me, what's the most exciting thing is game mechanics. Well, the way I described it, and I don't know how pretentious this is, and maybe it's like, yeah, again, another social embarrassment I'm committing upon myself. But like, I think, yeah, I'm interested in unlikely game mechanics, right? And by which I mean is like, you know, because the truth is, and again, this is not digging out other devs, like just unspeakable respect for the work that everyone else is doing, right? But it's that I'm not going to make the best, you know, first person shooter. I'm not going to make the best, you know, like 4X strategy game. I'm not. That's not the way my brain works rather. Like what I feel that, like, you know, our strength is as a group of people is like coming up with like good, meaningful experiments that kind of get you thinking and go, oh, okay, well that's hasn't been done before, and where might that lead? So that's where the unlikely game mechanics come about, like something that feel, you know, we're sort of exploring stuff that feels almost like beyond the world of games, stuff that doesn't feel like it's been properly done before, and the way we're doing that is we're trying to collab with people who actually are beyond the world of games. So we're collabing with, you know, as mentioned, Easy Fun, who's a music producer. You know, we're actually working with a fashion photographer on a project, which is actually a really cool project that I won't talk about too much right now. And then we've got some film people. But I think it's at that intersection that where you start colliding different worlds together, you start creating unlikely combinations and ideas for game mechanics. And that's where we're at, basically. That's where we're at. You know, keep it unlikely, keep it like experimental, keep it like good thought experiments that that people go, oh shit, yeah, like I hadn't thought of that, and that opens up a whole new set of possibilities that are quite exciting.
Sure, and make sound design yourself.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It's also just like, I think we just want to keep it really raw, make the whole thing feel really raw and really human. Or, you know, that is going to be a hallmark of our aesthetic. It's like, you know, handmade, and with all the good stuff of that, and probably some of the bad stuff, but you know, has more charm for a result of it.
You said you don't really need that much financial support to develop games, but still, are you getting any support? I don't know, from a publisher or something like that?
Yeah, no. So funding is a weird one. Yeah, like I know this is like a big part of, like, you know, like the key question is there's been a bunch of self-funding, you know, like, you know, which I think is super normal for studios setting up. But we also have had some like you know, private investment from various individuals who sort of believe in voice control. It's not loads. I mean, it's, you know, we're talking small fry stuff. I mean, you know, in terms of cost, it's like a lot of people, you know, we're all going to share the success and the failure of the game. So a lot of people are kind of putting, you know, a lot of time in, you know, through sort of almost like investing in it as a potential, you know, if it's a success, etc. But then, yeah, like there are a bunch of people to be paid, and you know, that is achieved through these, you know, these private investors, and also like a bit of self-funding and a bit of goodwill and a bit of, you know, bit of back end promises and all that sort of stuff. It's very by hook or by crook, you know, the whole thing. And you know, I think it, you know, it sort of has to be, you know, at this stage, because an unproven indie team, you know, it's hard to get publisher stuff. And we did talk to a whole bunch of publishers, and the universal response has been, wow, that's a really, really cool idea. Like, yeah, wow, like, but we have no idea whether people will buy it because it's not like a genre we can fit into. So we don't feel confident to invest any meaningful money into it. And it's true, like, we don't know whether people are going to buy it. We don't know. You know, it's a test as much as that. You know, it's an unknown for us as what it is for them. And I think that you know, we're willing to take that risk because for us it's like it's a piece of art that we believe is important and we believe should be made, and that has to be good enough. You know, that you know, we have to make something we're proud of, and that it has to be the result we believe, you know, we're looking for. I mean, you know, what indie game sells thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of copies? You know, some do, but usually they're within genre. Usually they're, you know, actually playing to the cozy genre or the 4X genre or whatever it is. So you've got to be sort of super careful about what your objectives are when you're an indie team. I think you got to be doing it for the love of it first and foremost.
So when you know what your strengths are and what you want to achieve, and also that you're having fun, that's the most important thing. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Making terrible mistakes and yeah.
What's the gaming industry like in England?
Well, I mean, obviously COVID has been pretty brutal. But yeah, I mean, I find and the good thing that I don't know if anyone in the UK is listening to this, but like the really good thing that I've been part of is the BAFTA Games crew, which unfortunately is actually ending this year, which is really sad because I thought it was really wonderful in terms of it just connects a bunch of upcoming games people together, and it's just like really it's this like WhatsApp group really that you just go, hey, like, does anyone know any great artists for like Steam Capsule, art or whatever? And everyone's like, oh yeah, I got one, or and so it's been a really good like just an immediate community to tap into. And I mean, for me, I just think one of the best things about the indie scene is the people, and it's only starting to come back into focus as events start again. I think there's something just so wonderful, like having drinks with people who are like actually going through the same kind of like artistic torment as you, but also motivated by the same things. So it's good in that sense. I mean, look, the industry is obviously hugely slanted towards AAA. The industry is obviously hugely slanted towards traditional genre stuff, which is obviously all legit and stuff, but it's not really where my interests lie. So yeah, you kind of have to look to the fringes to find other people making kind of like semi-farcical experiments, and that's where I think you can find them, but you have to look pretty hard.
Would you say the indie scene in England is not that big, or is it maybe getting bigger?
I think that the thing that everyone says, right, is like, indie apocalypse and all that. There's too many indies, too many people making games, and I think that is probably true. I mean, it's all too accessible now. Unity should have never made Unity. Everyone's allowed to do it now. No, I mean, but like I think that there is a hell of a lot of indie stuff going on, and I think the interesting question is there are a lot of makers. I'm not sure if there's the audience for all that indie stuff. I don't know. And this is me. This is literally me speaking off the top of my head. Like you could need to ask, a proper expert to get the kind of viewpoint. But I think what you get is there definitely is an audience, but it's whether there's an audience to financially sustain the creativity that's currently happening in the scene. I don't know. So yeah, that's what we're going to have to sort of. We're on that journey too. I mean, there's that famous thing of the number one thing that defines the success of your game is which genre you choose to make your game in, and they don't mean thriller versus romance. They mean, is it a freaking platformer or is it a 4X? Or is it a first person shooter? And that's kind of the number one thing, and that's because people are just looking for those games because they are tried and tested frameworks that are super fun. And I guess it's interesting to explore. Well, it's interesting to see how many people are genuinely interested in like fringe stuff. I mean, obviously, itch.io is a perfect example of that. But there is definitely really cool stuff being made. I'd just be kind of curious, and I haven't got to the bottom of this either, so I'm really talking off the cuff here. Like, it's interesting to know whether people are making successful careers financially. I mean, they're making brilliant careers artistically, but I think it'd be kind of curious to understand that, and maybe I just need to talk to more people about it.
Also, there is like really a bunch of stuff. Like if I only look at my Steam library, I mostly play indie games, and it's just so many of them, and so many I want to try out and want to play also like from beginning to the end. I think lots of people, like the people I talk to, they feel the same, that there's so many games.
So many bloody games, I know.
Yes.
So many games.
And I think there are people, like not only a few, I think there are many people who also really are into indie games and who want to play them, but we just don't have the time.
Oh, that's 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think that like, I'm definitely not saying that people don't play indie games. They really do. I mean, I'm one of them, and you're one of them, and I could name 20 people who are one of them, and it's like making games is an expensive and laborious business. you know. And there's some interesting market equation that probably should be looked at, which is like, you know, financial outlay, you know, both in terms of time and money, and then actually like plausible audience for that. And I'm definitely not talking about like Death's Door, and I'm definitely not talking about those kind of indie games. I'm talking about like actual indie games, you know, stuff that's kind of pushing the envelope.
Yeah. True. No. Yeah, that would be interesting. Maybe I can find that out.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's probably too depressing to look at. And don't look. The point of doing this again is not money. The point is to do it because it's fucking cool and needs to be done.
Yes, that's a great goal. Because you said that your indie WhatsApp group is kind of splitting up. That's really sad. Are there any plans? I don't know, to still get together somehow?
Well, I think that it might hopefully it'll just become an informal thing. I mean, to be honest, that's kind of what it's been anyway. Over the pandemic, the BAFTA games crew thing hasn't really had any events, and you know, that's no slight on them. They're having a hard time, obviously, you know, getting people in person and stuff. So it actually has all been informal. It's almost like I actually believe the community will carry on, you know, keep talking to each other and all sorts of stuff. But you know, also just like there's just like a joy of like, I mean, the Discord stuff. I mean, there's like how to market your game Discord, which is super useful, and there's all those sorts of great places to meet other indies and other devs. And I mean, the funny thing is how many other devs there are, you know.
Yeah.
It's like that. There's no shortage of devs.
No, that's true.
I'm including myself in that.
Is there actually any funding for indies in England specifically?
There's a bunch of funding. Yeah, there's a bunch of funding. I think you know, there's like Indie Fund, and there's some like other BFI stuff, and you know, British Film Institute stuff. I mean, the big thing though, I think, that every you know, people I've spoken to about this is, yeah, you can sometimes get that funding. It's like, you know, it's a few grand here, and it's obviously super great, and thank you very much, government. But it's not necessarily going to change anything up. And again, I'm explicitly talking about like fringe indie stuff. You know, if you're making a mobile game or with microtransactions, you can go to like the freaking top and get meaningful investment, and you know, in this country, you know, and have a super successful business. But like, you can't approach those investors by going like, yeah, I'm like doing this thing that I think is really artistically valuable, but I have limited market like proof for its validity, etc. So the thing that is very, very useful is there's a thing called VGTR, which is Video Game Tax Relief, and this is the greatest thing. This is the greatest thing, you know, in the scene, and having spoken to a bunch of different people, this is the thing that everyone always talks about, which is the way it works. Essentially, is everything you spend, you get 20% back in cash. And so that's the miracle. So you spend X whatever, and then you suddenly get this massive chunk of money in your bank account, and you're like, wow. Like, where did that come from? You know, so you know, so there's
party.
Yeah, exactly, a party. But then you just spend it again on the game, and it's a bit like the snake eating its own tail. Like, it's money you're sort of respending and getting back, money you're spending and getting back. You know, obviously it diminishes, but like it's quite motivating to spend money because you get 20% of it back.
Definitely, that helps.
Yeah, it really does. And if you think about the basic model, I mean, like if people go, how do I get money for marketing and stuff? It's like, well, I mean, we haven't actually got to that point really yet, but you go, well, if you spend a certain amount in your game, you're going to get that back to do the marketing. So it's kind of an interesting way of doing it. But yeah, that's super useful, and yeah, thank you, government, again.
Yes.
I'm sure it's going to be taken away in a second. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's like, you know.
Tom, when did you actually start developing games?
Well, as I mentioned, you know, I was involved in those ARG games, which was back in 2013. So from 2013, I've been exploring this world and sort of being adjacent to it. You know, creating interactive experiences in various different guises. But I would say that really, you know, Godolphin games, for me personally, I mean, there's other people on the team who have been in games much longer. But for me personally, this is kind of I'd say it's about 3 years of super dedicated, you know, game dev activity from me. So it's a fairly new thing. I mean, you know, I'm 32, and I'm a big believer in like try and reinvent yourself all the time. you know. And I think being 30 is like a good time to do it. Like, you know, if you're not going to do it then when else do it?
What would you say worked well in your life as a developer now?
There's a bunch of stuff that is really good. I mean, like, I don't know. I get really excited about making things, you know, and I think there was an incredible joy in getting to a working game that, you know, is entirely something that comes from, I'm not going to say my imagination and other people's imaginations, but, you know, my close compatriots, not the word, companions, you know, something that we created together. And I think that in a way that's the thing that for me has felt so special, is that you can really crave. I mean, if you're a makey kind of person, which I know so many people are, right? I'm not like, oh, we're special maker people. I fucking hate all that exclusivity shit. Like, I think a lot of people really crave making stuff, and I think a lot of jobs, and, you know, this is coming from the perspective of someone who's had an actual job for a long time, and, like, you know, it has its own rewards and it's lots of interesting stuff, and there's loads of great people, all that sort of stuff. But, like, often, like, jobs can make you feel a bit like a parasite, I think, because you're not pursuing your own agenda, and you're not you're often servicing something else that is not from your brain and not from your kind of heart. It's from someone else's brain and heart, and it doesn't even matter whether you value it or not. You're just doing it anyhow. And I think that for me was just like a big emotional moment of going, like, you know, I finally made a shift where I'm creating something that I personally value. And I think a lot of people have that. And I know, you know, and also, by the way, I totally understand. It's like, you know, I'm really lucky that I had a very successful career, so I'm able to do this. So I understand it's totally privileged what I'm saying. And I guess in a way, you know, the big question you said was, you know, has your previous experience helped you? Well, that is probably the biggest way it's helped me. Is, you know, it's helped me get a secure footing to actually explore this. So that is a very meaningful and tangible benefit of those 10 years.
Is there something as a developer where you say, oh, okay, that didn't work at all?
yeah, this game called Unknown Number. No. I mean, like, honestly, I've made so many dreadful mistakes and then undone them as well. You know, most of them anyway. No, I think, you know, it's like one does make really bad mistakes, and, you know, especially when you're exploring, you know, because you can read all the design books out there, or you can, you know, get to grips with 3D level design, and, you know, but it's like even like experts in 3D level design, I think, would struggle to, you know, understand how to design a game like this instantly, you know, because it's got a whole different set of rules, and that's what's been interesting about it, is we've been coming up with basically as we've been designing it, we've been designing the rules as well. Because I don't, you know, how does a game that is about telephone calls, that takes place through voicemails and, you know, interactive, how does that look? You know, what cues does a player need? Like, I mean, the, you know, biggest mistake I made, right, was we built the entire game on a real telephone system originally. Right, we actually built it as phone calls. Like, it would actually ring your actual genuine phone, and, you know, we were like, this is so clever, we're so cool, we've nailed it. Unplayable. Unplayable. Like, utter nonsense. Like, it was confusing, like, you know, because of live telephone calls, it's like, you know, it's having to be operated, you know, somewhere in the cloud and through a third party, and you don't want to be called at random times. You just don't, you know, it doesn't happen like that. And also, the other thing is that voice control doesn't work over phone lines. I don't know if you've ever called a bank and tried to have a voice control conversation with your bank. It's like horrible. It's horrible. And the other big mistake was actually assuming I didn't need visuals. I went, oh yeah, people can just imagine this. People are gonna just imagine this, and it's gonna be somehow they're gonna have great imagination. And it's like, that's actually not how you work. Like, I don't work like that. Like, it's assuming this almost like this super player who can just picture everything and instantly feel engaged. And, you know, so started off as this almost like Puritan experiment, and you know, with making lots of random mistakes, and gradually worked out, oh no, you know, when players need to speak, they actually need to hear a tone, like on Alexa, like beep beep. They need to hear that. Otherwise, when do they, you know, they think they can speak over the players. You know, you actually need to kind of create a sort of a set of indications for how to behave. Otherwise, it's just so chaotic and confusing. And I've actually only learned that through making all those mistakes. basically. If there's a mistake to have made, I've done it.
Yeah, but that's what mistakes are for. You learn from them.
Yeah, no, totally. And I would say the game is almost mistake free at this point.
That's good to hear. Is there a moment in your life as an indie developer that you will always remember?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting things is, I mean, quitting my job was a moment I'm always going to remember. That was very scary. Very scary indeed. I always remember that. I remember calling up my friend and being like, "Hey, like, I'm just going to do this," and they're like, "Okay, go for it, man." Like that was very, very memorable and very scary. And then that was the project that I spoke about before, where that person I was working with then went. That was a big moment of like, oh shit! Like I've thrown in everything. I've like put everything into this ring, and I've just like lost my key partner. I'm really screwed. So that was another scary moment. But I think, you know, the positive moments is, you know, I loved writing the script. I loved doing all of the sound design, and just it's so fun and invigorating, like working with your friends, you know, and you know, you're all sort of like throwing ideas, like, oh, that could be cool, oh, this or that, and like, you know, and just doing, you know, and just that workshop was really great, just smashing everything together, and just the chaos of that was wonderful. But then there's some other stuff, like, you know, I'm actually really happy that it's starting to get recognition. You know, I spoke about how, oh, I don't know if there's enough players for this kind of game, and that's true. But I tell you what, I do know there is enough for. There's enough press interest. You know, I think that's the really great thing. And I actually at the beginning of this process, I'm a long-term reader of Edge magazine because I'm a nerd, etc. And like I remember right at the beginning, like, yeah, like if we get this game into Edge magazine, I think that's like, you know, I'll have to consider the project's success. And obviously that's so naive and stupid, and I know better now, but it was wonderful to have an article in Edge magazine, you know, and a really good investigative interview about, you know, the idea, what was the idea behind it, the genre, all that sort of stuff. So that felt really great. And then the next thing that's felt really great is getting into the London Games Festival as official selection.
Oh wow!
Which is awesome. I'm really hyped by that, and you know, there's going to be a big event in central London, and you know, it's very, very few games were chosen, and I just, those sorts of things remind you that you are doing something that is valuable and interesting. You know, even if you're doing it at a loss. I don't know.
Congrats, that's great. When are they? 1st
of April, that one is.
All right, okay.
Yeah, there'll be an event and everything. I'll be posting about it and stuff. But yeah, I'm like really excited by that. Really excited by that. I think that's it's just fun to go, oh, like what we're doing is not falling on deaf ears. What we're doing is resonating. And that's another thing, because I mean, I'm sure anyone who makes anything can totally relate to this. That sometimes that thing of going, have I lost all? Do I even know what good is? Like, have I just lost perspective on what good looks like? You know,
that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you put it out in the world, and then people go, no, this is good. And you go, phew, oh my goodness, I'm glad, because I really didn't know anymore. and you know, just an answer to the question about, like, you know, the indie scene. I mean, the indie scene it's got great champions. It's got great festivals. It's got great press support. You know, so yeah, I think it's all looking really positive.
From your experience so far, do you have any advice for other indie developers?
Well, I mean, who am I to give advice, right? I'd give myself advice, but like, I think that the most obvious one is there's a great quote, and I think it's from David Brevik from who made early days of Blizzard, and he said that there's only one difference between there's only a difference between a game maker and a non-game maker, and that is that a game maker makes games. And it's like, I know it sounds really silly, but I think a lot of people are like, yeah, I'd really like to make a game. Yeah. And it's like, I think that a lot of people do little experiments as well. My advice, and I know it doesn't apply to everyone, and I know it comes from, you know, all sorts of contexts that are quite unique to my situation, but I would say go all in and back yourself to the point where it's embarrassing. like really go too far, like find an idea that you believe in, and then really back it. Like, and actually it's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing to be backing something because you're saying I really believe in this, and like people are going, oh yeah, and you're trying to explain the game and it hasn't been made. People are like, yeah, I guess that. I mean, imagine going, yeah, it's like a voice controlled thriller. It's phone calls. They're like, okay, how does that look? Sounds good, I guess. Like, you have to just believe it. You have to believe it's good and push through the doubt and yeah, as I said, embarrass yourself with the degree to which you're committing to it. That would be my main advice. But yeah, I mean, also the other advice I'd have, and I think this is again parroting someone who's much older and wiser than me, who's like, yeah, don't make anything that anyone else would make, and I think that is actually really good advice. Well, it works for me. I mean, ironically, maybe it's not the best idea for a business to do that because, as we all know, the Steam algorithm works on the premise of if you like this, then try this. So maybe it's not great business advice, but I think it's great creative advice, which is like, yeah, like what's the thing that only you could make? What's the thing that only speaks directly to your passions and your interests? And for me, it's like sort of, yeah, like stuff that feels inspiringly experimental and daring in that sense. And a little bit outrageous in like, okay, sure, yeah, like let's get that sounds interesting, give it a go. But I think, yeah, like everyone else will have their own strengths, and it's just like make sure you're doing the thing that's unique to your personal vision. Sorry, in Americans for that terrible accent I just did. I'm literally living with a bunch of Americans now, so I'm literally slipping into American too much. But I'm so bad at American accents, so again, massive apologies to everyone.
No worries. But I think that's true what you're saying. I mean, copy and paste, that's something everyone can do. And really do the stuff you want to do or work on your own ideas and your creativity. I think that's great advice.
I think there's also a thing about, like, I know this sounds really, like, again, apologies for the pretension, and I know how bad this sounds, but I think it's like, I think everyone should try to be an auteur. Like everyone should try and be like a great artist. And I know that's like, I doubt that I'm a great artist. I doubt that so many people are. But if you're not trying, if you're not trying to create something brilliant in art, then why are you doing it? And that's why I get so inspired by people like Lucas Pope and like Jonathan Blow and just people who are like, I'm a freaking auteur. I'm making art here. I just love that. And it's like, that's the thing that I'm aspiring to. I just want to be like, yeah, I'm a freaking auteur, man. I'm not saying I am right now, but I'm just saying, like, that's the objective. That's the objective, to turn around and go like, I have a vision, I believe in this, I'm making this, and yeah, it's singular and unique and important.
It's really important to do that and to think that. So your upcoming game, Unknown Number, a first-person talker, is coming out soon, end of June, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you currently feel about the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing because, like, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, like, it's pretty hard to see something fresh if you've played it on and worked on it so many times, So I feel good because I feel like, well, okay, look, a few months back, I was at that point where I was like, I don't know anymore. I don't know where this is. And however, with the release of the gameplay trailer, which I don't know if you guys are showing on this show or not, but like with the release of the gameplay trailer, it was a real eureka moment because people suddenly saw what I'd been banging on about for the last 3 years. People suddenly understood, and they're like, oh, that's what you mean with like the phone in the middle and the videos in the background, and like it's like it doesn't. It's really hard to explain, like that's what you mean by a shape-shifting interface, and so the way that people have responded to that trailer, has made me feel really good because it's helped me. It's reminded me that all the things that I originally thought were cool about the game are still cool about the game. And the more exposure I show, the more I show it to more people, the more I'm able to distance from my own kind of almost fatigue, because it's normal. Like, I'm fatigued. I mean, we're all fatigued. You work on something that long, you get really fatigued, and you get confused about what's good about it. But like, I think that all the times we've been bringing it into the world, we've got a really good response, and that's helping reinvigorate and remind me that it's a worthwhile and good project.
Keeps your energy up.
Totally. I mean, but the thing is, one always wants to start work. I don't know how you are, but I always want to work on the next project. Because it's always that thing of like the most exciting thing about anything is the ideation phase, and then actually like polishing is pretty slow and boring. So we're definitely in the slow and boring phase right now. So I'm just like, oh fuck this! Can't I just get this out and then just work on the next thing? But like, yeah, the polish is important.
Yes, it is. But just keep going for a few more weeks.
Yeah. Well, I'm heading to GDC, so that's gonna be. I'm seeing that as a holiday.
Oh, that's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the free parties.
Yes. Well, Tom, I wish you all the best. Keep going, like the next few weeks. Keep your energy up. It will be great. I'm really looking forward to the game.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really, really appreciated and great. Yeah, great to talk to a fellow indie enthusiast.
Thanks so much for being on our show.
My absolute pleasure.